Hey everybody, welcome back to this final part in my little mini-series exploring the mutant body in horror. Woohoo! Now, for reviews of Bride of Reanimator and the Basket Case trilogy, do check out the previous 2 episodes. But for now, we're going to be taking a brief look at Todd Browning's fascinating 1932 movie Freaks. Now, what's really offensive about Freaks isn't the title or the subject matter, but the way studios and audiences simply couldn't handle it. MGM disowned it. Audiences called it sick. Legend says that a woman blamed her miscarriage on the shock of seeing these real deformed humans on screen. It was banned in the UK for 30 years until the 1960s, when it was rediscovered by the counterculture. But yet then, even then in the permissive 1960s, it was still given an X certificate. And what was so hideously repellent about it? Well, it used, brace yourself now, real life disabled people to play, are you ready for this? Disabled characters. Shock horror. That was seen as beyond the pale back then, and the film actually still has the power to probably shock some people today. Now, part soap opera and part exploitation movie, Freaks is about a tuxedo-wearing midget called Hans who falls for the able-bodied trapeze artist Cleopatra. And when she actually starts to return his affection and love, he's shocked. Is she really that open-minded, or does she just want his rumoured inheritance money? This central plot about a disabled person being used and exploited for monetary gain is a sort of microcosm of much of the offence Freaks caused. Some people said that the film exploited disabled people. Indeed, the whole sideshow industry used to use these unfortunates as figures of spectacle and profit, and therefore should be outlawed, it was argued. Even Lady Olga, she plays the bearded lady in Freaks. She later complained that the movie failed to portray the cast with enough respect. Yet the actors Browning gathered were real-life sideshow performers, many with long, successful careers. There were people on this film like the human caterpillar, the living skeleton, and half-boy. They may not have asked for their biological lot. But these people were canny, brave, and ambitious enough to turn a perceived weakness into a lucrative strength. By throwing these people on the screen with no apology and surprising little fanfare, I felt it was amazing how quick, to me, their initial freakishness starts playing completely second fiddle to their personality, just like anybody else. It's a little bit like Basket Case 2 in that regard. Is the film exploitative? Well, yeah, I guess Freaks is exploitative, but I think it's strangely empowering too for both viewer and for the actors involved. Admittedly, Browning throws in a hive mind plot device which is both strange and patently untrue, that if one disabled person is offended, the whole community will seek revenge. Basket Case 2 does a similar thing, to be fair. That film is a direct descendant of Freaks, in my opinion. But despite this hysterical and stupid hive mind myth, that the deformed people would work as one homogeneous homicidal mass, in reality, these sideshow performers were as individualistic as anyone else. A reminder that we're all pretty much the same, no matter what our shape or size. The idea of the freak community, as it were, gathering together for revenge on the able-bodied world does work well, though, as a plot device in Freaks and in Basket Case, and leads to a genuinely chilling rain-soaked climax in Browning's film. But of course, it's not really reality. Freaks was Browning's masterpiece, and I think it's better and more satisfying than his famous version of Dracula, the one with Bela Lugosi. I really like that film, but it's a patchy movie that seems ill at ease with the new talkie technology. I think the Spanish version is superior in some ways. Freaks does have a few sound issues here and there, but unlike in Dracula, the director Browning here, I feel like he settles into the new cinema with plenty of dialogue, and as a result, you get some deep, complex drama. How ironic and depressing, then, that this groundbreaking film cost Browning his career and flung him into his own permanent Hollywood freakdom because of the controversy of this film. It's shocking. Now, I suppose, in summing up, what I've been trying to say on this little 3-episode journey through mutation is that human beings are horribly prejudiced creatures. We hate difference, which is why races and religion and genders can be at loggerheads so often, because we're different from one another. Something in us desires not unity, we desire uniformity, and I think that's very different. We have a particular fear of ourselves becoming different from the group we are in, that we might become warped physically somehow and therefore be different from the rest. And so we make this ridiculous connection as well, that the physically deformed must be stunted morally as they appear to be physically. They're different in that way too. Just look at how many of James Bond villains have something wrong with their face or their body or scar. Look at horror movie villains, from Jason to Freddy to Michael Myers and Madman Mars and Cropsy and Pinhead, and well, the list goes on. They've all got, like something physically wrong with them, because in our minds, physical difference unsettles us. Is it any wonder then that horror uses the mutated body to scare and disturb? From films like Michael Winner's The Sentinel, with its parade of deformed people at the end of it walking out of the gates of hell or whatever, to the works of David Cronenberg and the films we've explored in the last 3 episodes, horror is quite happy to use the deformed body as a tool for fear-making. But what I like about Bride of Reanimator and Basket Case trilogy and Todd Browning's Freaks is that, to my mind, they have a far more sophisticated and respectful view of disability, deformity and difference than mainstream films like James Bond do. Basket Case 2 in particular says being a freak, so-called, is relative. Grotesque ugliness depends on who you hang out with. It reminds me of that wonderful Twilight Zone episode where a woman is in bandages after plastic surgery, and finally she gets these bandages taken off, and the doctors look at her and they scream in repelled disgust at how ugly she is, and she runs away, and only we see her and she's actually beautiful. But what it turns out that we see the doctors' faces, and the doctors are all twisted and malformed, but only by our standards. The pretty young woman is shipped off to a community of other freaks like her, who all look like hip young 50s kids, but they're not attractive in that world, they're ugly in that world. I suppose what I like about Basket Case 2 particularly, and in some ways Freaks, what they're doing is just saying like, hey, maybe we should just hang out together. Let's just accept that beauty is relative. And let's even be willing to be unpredictable and try and find the beauty in the seemingly grotesque. Indeed, it's fascinating to see how more and more people these days turn to body modification, to actively try to transform their own body and mutate it in a way because they see a value in looking and being different from the norm. I find that very interesting. Now for me, tonight's films remind me that the world is simply not like the world of San Andreas, which I mentioned in episode 2, the film, which splits human beings into goodies and baddies and heroes and earthquake fodder. Everyone is slotted into place, most of which they're all handsome and beautiful. I reckon if Jesus rocked up to the characters of San Andreas, he'd be happy to hang out with them, but just as much he would be happy to hang out and love the rat-headed, giant-toothed, fleshy heads of Granny Ruth's secret hostel. I think Jesus comes along and says I'm supposed to love my neighbor whether they have one head or two. I treat them like human beings. Well, that's it for the Flicks the Church Forgot. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Rev Peter Laws, or on Facebook at the Flicks the Church Forgot, or check out the newly designed peterlaws.co.uk for more information, where you can get old episodes, more info on the other work I'm doing, which actually includes some exciting new writing news I recently announced. And also there's an opportunity through there, if you'd like to donate to the show, if you feel that way inclined. But until then, stay beautiful, whether you're Dwayne or Belial, and don't forget, the Flicks the Church Forgot.